Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started. We're going to be diving into strategic relationships and the value to your success in the federal market. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Sometimes we go it alone, but we don't have to. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick tip. I've given this tip before, but it's one of my favorite ones, and I want to come back to it because I'm going to talk about this today. But I wanted to mention a book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty by Harvey Mackay. And it's the only networking book you're going to need. In this book, it tends to be a lot more for business and commercial. But the reality is the way the federal market works, people buy from people. Yes, the proposal goes in, there's a whole formal process. But everything that happens before that is basically B2C, business to consumer. If I'm going to go in and talk to a director of IT, for example, at the Army, then I'm talking to a consumer. I'm trying to sell them on a meeting. I'm trying to sell them on, hey, here's an approach we're thinking about. What do you think? I'm trying to sell them on the idea of sharing their own challenges and needs. And so when you really think about federal government selling, business to government, B2G, at its heart, it's B2C, business to consumer, person to person. And Harvey Mackay talks about digging your well before you're thirsty. You want to have these relationships in place. And I'm going to talk a lot about this today. But it begins long before you really need the relationship. If you need something today or tomorrow, that's not a relationship that if it's a brand new person, that's not a relationship. It's transactional. You're trying to get something. But when you think out, I want to get into the Army, building those relationships is going to drive you in that direction. So that was just a quick tip for those showing up early and on time is go pick up that book. And that's one of those books that is a good audio book as well. So if you're driving or walking around, jogging or something, you can actually listen to it and get a lot of great value in there. Okay, we're going to get started with the training. Let me just get my ducks in a row. Okay, again, we're going to be talking about relationships, strategic relationships in the federal market. And I just define those as relationships are for mutual growth. There's a lot of different relationships you might have, but strategic ones are for mutual growth. Right. And so I want you to win more contracts, and I want you to understand how you can win more contracts through strategic relationships. If you're not industry, let's say your agency or your PTAX, there's a lot of people into our trainings. You can do the same thing. You just have a different outcome that you're looking for, but your strategic relationships will drive towards what you're looking for. An example is, and I want to really quickly just give another plug for a friend of mine, Jennifer Schau. She's got a big networking event coming up in Washington, D.C. next Monday, July 17th. And I think tickets actually stopped being on sale today because they're going to be sold out today. But if you're still around, go there. But because she has strategic relationships with a bunch of us, we're able to help promote her event. That's a good thing to help her get that event going. But it's also very good for me to be able to tell people about it because even though Jennifer Schaus is hosting the event, the rest of us are going to get the benefit out of the event. All right, so let's talk about strategic relationships and where they fit in the 7-step process. I just want to make sure you understand it. Every day when I'm talking about the 7-step process, I like making sure you're seeing the 7-step process that I defined for the federal market. It's really straightforward on how to achieve sales, right? You do some research on your target customer. You identify the people you want to call through targeting. You then begin to do cold calls, pick up the phone and do outreach so that you can schedule meetings, those first meetings with people. From outreach, you're going to develop what we call strategic relationships. And these strategic relationships, which you'll see in a minute, are win-win relationships where you're mutually helping each other, mutual growth, right? When you have strategic relationships, you will be able to identify and hear about slam dunk opportunities, ones that your company can win. You'll hear about slam dunk opportunities and be able to put it into your pipeline. And then once you have a pipeline full of slam dunk opportunities, you can write winning proposals that are much more than just a rapid response to something in SAM, but a well thought out, captured opportunity that you can write a winning proposal for. And that's how you win business in the federal market. It is not overly complex. It is a process for sure. And you need to learn the process and you need to learn the skills and develop the skills. But it's not overly complex, right? I think coming up with the whole idea of an iPhone is pretty complex way back in the day, but coming up with the next iPhone is not that complex. It's a process. So today I'm going to cover down on what are strategic relationships, why are strategic relationships vital, when should you build those strategic relationships, and with who should you build those strategic relationships with? And then I want to end with just how do you build a strategic relationship? I have 10 tips for what you should be doing and thinking about as you're building strategic relationships. And I want to help you understand this from a real story. So I'm going to tell you in a second that, and in fact, I can just switch over to the next page. But I spent 20 years as a government contractor. And so some of that time, some of my customers in the last 10 years were like the White House, the Executive Office of the President, and DOD, the Air Force, and Army. But I had a strategic relationship with somebody when I was at the White House. I built a relationship with somebody I met through there who, when they went over to DOD, they brought us, and we were able to land like a $10 million deal over there through the relationships, because they knew us and they let us know about an opportunity that was over there. Plus they kind of advocated for us as well. And so we had dug that well, if you will, for 2 years before that person even went over to the new responsibilities. Those are the type of relationship or benefits that come from having relationships, right? They're unknown. And you should be thinking about how you might be able to bring them back. So I'm jumping a little ahead into the training. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years, as I was just saying, in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process A to Z, like the 7-step process, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. Do me a favor, if you haven't, put your company name into the chat with core competencies, 2 or 3 words, not a lot of words, but 2 or 3. Make it easy for the buyer, for others in the community, and for me to remember who you are. And then, come back and do it over and over again. And it really sinks into our memory. Make sure you do that, because that literally is one of the process steps of attending training. Don't just come in and learn and go away. You have a chance to build a relationship. There's like 50 or 100 people live on the different platforms today watching this. And so I want you to be able to let them know who you are. One question I have for you, do me a favor in the chat, for those of you who are around the chat and putting it in there, do me a favor. Do you tell me just, I've been on this new format. I'm just curious what you think. For like 200 videos, it was just me and my face talking to you, giving you training. And lately, over the last couple of months, we've switched over to these slides and trying to put down what I say in slides, and then put Neil in a box down in the bottom corner. Which do you prefer, right? From the training, right? So I know you all prefer to see me full screen, but do you prefer the slides, or do you prefer no slides at all and just kind of face to talk? All right, put that in the chat, and that would be a help to me. Let's talk about what strategic relationships are. First off, they're different than regular relationships. Often when I ask somebody, do you have relationships, strategic relationships? Yeah, we talk with these people. We know people over at this company, et cetera. Those aren't strategic relationships. Those are relationships, and they're great and they're helpful, but they're not strategic relationships. Strategic relationships are ones that you and the other person are on purpose building, right? We don't just have the relationship. We're actively building the relationship. And, so think about that. Like, who do you meet with? A great way to decide if you're actively building that relationship is if you connect every 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most, but every 2 weeks, and you come back, 15-minute meeting. Hey, let's talk about our business or whatever. Your mission and your services are aligned. So if you're working with a company, your culture and your missions are aligned towards what you're trying to do in the federal market. If your strategic relationship is with an agency person, like I was talking about, are my services aligned with what they do? There's no point in me aligning a strategic relationship with a construction leader within the federal market when I'm an IT company, for example. So having that alignment. Strategic relationships, number 3 here, you're committed to mutual growth and learning. And this is really important. Obviously, within the industry, when I'm looking at a large or small business and I'm building a strategic relationship with a person, not a company, a person in there, when I'm building that strategic relationship, we have this commitment to a mutual growth. I want to help you grow, and I want you to help me grow. I don't want to go, what opportunities are you bringing me today? That's not a strategic, that's not even nice, right? But it's not a strategic relationship. It's about, hey, have you heard anything? Here's what I heard. Just freely giving towards that mutual growth. And when you think about learning, there's obviously the learning that can happen between 2 industry partners, but learning can also happen when I build a strategic relationship. Let's just use for this today's example, a CIO in the Army, if I'm building a strategic relationship with them, I want to learn about their challenges, their needs. I want to share best practices from the industry, not just from my business, but hey, here's what Amazon or Microsoft just said, and they just really put out a new study. You'd probably value that, like that mutual learning. A strategic relationship is one that is win-win focused. I talk about Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And one of the stages he says that we want to be at is win-win. We don't want to be at lose-win, where one party is losing and the other person's winning, right? So a strategic relationship is not only where it is win-win, but we're committed to it being win-win. So here are some examples on the bottom of how you know that that it is a strategic relationship. And I wanted to put them in, right? And how you know another person is committed to also building the strategic relationship with you. So first thing, right? They schedule meetings with you. They're not just promising. I have a senior commander within the DoD side where we're committed to connecting and getting in there. He's got some things he's trying to do. I got some things I'm trying to do. But we have a strategic relationship where we're trying to help each other. And one of the ways that I know that is because we keep scheduling meetings and connecting. We're talking to each other, and it's not just promises. When I ask a question, the other person answers it directly. For example, if you ask me, do I know anybody at the Army that can help? I go, oh yeah, I know this person, right? If I sit there and say, well, we've done some work, there's some people, I'm not sure about doing it. A strategic partner is going to sit there and say, oh, I know Bob Jones, that's the CIO of the Army. Here's his phone number and his email. Do you want me to send you something to warm it up? Right? That's a strategic relationship. Everything else is just a relationship. Not that they're bad, but they ain't the best. They say, ask me anything. And this goes into this idea. And by the way, think about it for yourself. Do you say this to other people? Ask me anything. I will tell you anything. There's literally like 1 or 2 things I won't tell people. And actually those I'll tell, but only once, I have a good, strong relationship. But otherwise, ask me anything. And that literally should be what you're looking for from the other person, and importantly, what you're giving to the other person. They do what they say, right? If they say that they're going to send you a document, if they say they're going to sign an NDA, they make it happen. That's a way when you look at industry partners, you can tell if things are moving forward, is they actually send you stuff. There's and there's a difference, by the way, between somebody who's just busy and falls down on getting a task done and somebody who talks a good game but doesn't actually follow through, right? The person who's busy just kind of stick to them, but they're still a good strategic partner. The other one where they say they'll do something but they don't do it, that's a good sign that it's not a good partner. I already talked about introductions. A strategic relationship will make introductions, and you, as you're building strategic relationships, you want to make introductions without hesitation. Nothing about having a person's name, number, and email is intellectual property. Nothing is close hold. Share that information out. Those 2 people, if they have success without you, you should be happy about that. And then that's what you should expect from teaming partners. So again, they freely share information. If I have a CIO I'm talking to, a strategic relationship is when they're talking about their challenges and goals. Many of us have called contracting officers while something is in market research and they still won't talk to us about the requirements. It's like the craziest thing in the world. It's a clear sign that command, that office, that agency is not committed to working with industry, not committed to finding the best solution. They're just committed to doing paperwork. Not that I'm getting on a soapbox. And then the last thing is they never cross this line. I have this way of thinking about ethics. There's no such thing as business ethics. It always amazed me when I was, and I think the first time I ever saw this was when I was in the Army, or I did a short stint where I worked for a large prime contractor, and they had training on business ethics. I'm like, there's no such thing as business ethics. There's ethics. There's right or there's wrong. You don't need anybody to tell you whether it's right or wrong. And if anybody sits there and says to you, I probably shouldn't tell you this, then they're not a strategic relationship. They're a person leading you down a path to trouble. So keep those kind of things in mind. But when you can find the people who do the positive side of these bullets that I'm mentioning, then you're going to have good success. By the way, a lot of this stuff, if you want to get a copy of all these tips I'm saying, if you're not writing it down fast enough, just put in the chat, can I let you know about this deck? I'm actually going to probably put it into a different format, like a handout, but just say handout for relationships. Okay, so let's talk about why relationships are really important. And I strongly believe in strategic relationships, not just relationships. Relationships are casual. We're not really putting a lot of effort into it. Many of us have, some of us have a lot of friends, right? but then you have a few friends who are BFFs or something. There's truly something you actually connect. You go to a movie, you get together, you go to dinner, you talk about important things, you talk about completely unimportant things. Well, those are strategic friendships or real friendships. And then you have kind of the second tier friendships, and strategic relationships are really important. And when you understand how they fit into the 7-step process, you'll understand how these strategic relationships can lead to your success. So I already mentioned some of this, right? But they can help you understand their organization. Whether it's a large prime vendor, let's say I'm trying to build a strategic relationship with a program manager of a large contract vehicle, they can help me understand, well, who is managing task orders within your company. If I'm on the commercial side at a large prime, but I'm trying to get to the federal side, they can help me understand who's running the federal side and how to get in. They'll make introductions to other people. It's what I was just saying there, right? They'll help you find the answers about current opportunities. And this is industry and agencies. A strategic relationship, you can have these, and I'm going to talk in a minute about who you can have these relationships with. But when you have strategic relationships within an organization, an agency, or a prime, and you start moving forward about opportunities, capture is about about shaping an opportunity, but about getting answers about the opportunity. Well, if you have a relationship, a strategic relationship with somebody inside an agency, and an opportunity is still pre-RFP, then it's okay for them to talk about it. It's encouraged for them to talk about it. And so they can talk about, hey, these are the people who might be involved, or these are some of the challenges that are going on. They can share some of that information. And it's the same thing with a strategic partner who is on industry side. They can talk to you about what they're hearing. There's this group called Fast Rope. Lately, I've been on them. I haven't even met them, and I want to, but they're out in Dayton, Ohio is one place where they meet, and they come together every couple of weeks or something, and they talk about opportunities. Those people, whether they realize it or not, are kind of building strategic relationships because they come in and they freely share about opportunities. I heard about this opportunity. Here's the information. Here's the skinny, is what we call it, right? When you have relationships and you build relationships, you dig your well before you're thirsty. When you build relationships within an agency, some of those people you have relationships with, where you've taken the time to engage with them, teach them about what's going on in industry with the best practices in elevators and lifts, or in cybersecurity. When you're having those conversations with these people you're building strategic relationships with, some of them actually might be on the selection board, the people who will review your proposal when you submit it. Right? There's nothing unethical, right, about what you're doing, but you're building relationships with people who are in the know, and because they're in the know about what you sell and what you do, they might actually be in the on the selection board side. It's the same thought going with that. They could also let you know about opportunities, about RFIs, et cetera. That's a big one. I often hear from small businesses out there who have relationships who say, yeah, I heard about an RFI dropping. Somebody from the program office called and said, this RFI is dropping. Make sure you follow up on it. They didn't give them any insider information. They just said, it's coming out. Don't miss it. Contracting officers often do this. And so you want to have relationships with them as well, where they say, I know we've got this RFI coming down. Don't miss it on sam.gov, right? And so having a strategic relationship, you can hear about RFIs and other activity coming out. I want to skip through some of this. You're probably reading, but just those who maybe are listening to the audio side of this, you can shape the future opportunities. And again, that just comes back to capture. When you have strategic relationships inside of an agency, that is capture, shaping the way that they're thinking about a requirement and the way they're thinking about the solution. For small businesses and large businesses, it's really important to have strategic relationships. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but they give you access to what you didn't have access to before. And so on a large prime contractor, for example, they can make introductions, or a small business, they can make introductions into the agencies they're supporting. They can make introductions to the teams. I've seen larger companies introduce smaller businesses onto another team, not their team, but another team, saying, hey, this company's a good one. But it's because the small had a strong relationship with the middle company, and the middle company just knew about things. Well, that's just relationships. I talk about this a lot with the small business community. We have got to develop a giver's gain mentality, that givers will gain. And another way that I say this is give without expectation. And when you give, things will just happen, right? Don't give it with the expectation of getting, but givers will gain. Things just go good for those of us who just keep giving. And so it's really important as you build your relationships, and you think about why are strategic relationships important. They're important for every step of the 7-step process going forward. You need the strategic relationships for different reasons, but they can be very helpful along each one of those steps. So when should you build the strategic relationships? This is another one of those slides which takes me 2 seconds to build, but literally you should build that when you don't have 10. So if you don't have strategic relationships right now, and by the way, here, if you worked for me, I would tell you, you don't have a strategic relationship unless you have a standing meeting with that other person. If you don't have that, you just have relationships, which are fine. Again, those are nice, but those are not strategic relationships. Those are not the things that'll lead us to the success. Strategic relationships are with the companies that are going to lead to your success and where you can help them grow as well. And so you want to build 10 strategic relationships right now. I have a whole nother training that talks about who exactly to go after. And I'm going to say it again in a minute with who, but I have a whole training on that. Actually, I'm not positive, but I think for the sustaining members, if you go into the sustaining membership, the whole course is in there, how to start and build strategic relationships. And it's a long course. It's like 3 hours, 4 hours. And if you can't invest that in order to earn millions, then the course is not for you. But right now, if you don't have strategic relationships, start building them. So here's really quickly who you should build strategic relationships with. If you followed the training I've been doing this week, where I talk about the 7-step process, I talk about targeting, and targeting is finding people in your target agency or in large and small businesses that can support that target agency. But here's who you want to be building strategic relationships with. Obviously, the program office. That's that CIO example. Small business professionals. They hear about everything. I actually didn't even put the KO in here, but they're a little less on the strategic side. PTAX, though. And there's this whole thing about the Apex Accelerator, PTAX. Don't ever let it not work for you. Go back and make it work for you. The PTAC counselors want to help you. Just figure out how to make it happen. But when you develop a strategic relationship with them, they will help your business reach the next level. And it doesn't matter if you're a $1 million or less or $20 million firm, they can help you. You just need to build that strategic relationship to that same stage. I do a lot of training. And in fact, we just put on our website this training about the 7 mentors. And so PTACs are there, the small business professionals. SBA has the procurement center representative, business opportunity specialist. These are all people that you can reach out to. Large primes obviously want to build relationships with, but small businesses, think about it. If you're a veteran-owned or a woman-owned small business, then you want to have relationships, strategic relationships with some people, 1 or 2 from each one of the other categories. For example, if something's going to come out 8A and you can't get access to it, well, now you have a strategic partner where you can build some relationships in there. And as you build the right relationships, they can come back and team on your opportunities. And so you want to find strategic partners, 1 each at least, from a hub zone, an SDVO, a woman-owned, and an 8A, and a large. So that's 5 different ones just in the industry. When you have these, I guarantee, and you're meeting with them on a regular basis, I guarantee you the success that you want is going to come to you. So let me give you some tips on how to build strategic relationships. So the first thing to keep in mind, is that, and I've been saying this a lot, don't see everybody as a strategic relationship. It's really important that you understand some people are super nice, but they're not going to help your company grow. Don't stop hanging out with them. Just hang out with the strategic relationships a lot more, right? Have standing meetings with somebody who can really move your company forward and that you can contribute to their success as well. I already talked about number 2, dig your well before you're thirsty. I want you to set your expectations correctly, right? A strategic relationship is not one you call somebody and bam, we're a strategic relationship. No, you meet with them on a regular basis. You're developing that trust. People buy from those they know, like, and trust. Trust takes a long time, right? I can begin to know you pretty quickly, like you over a smaller period of time, and then trust comes from working with you. You do what you said you were going to do. I do what I said I was going to do. So set your expectations correctly. Identify the people you want to begin to build relationships with, the organizations, the agencies you want to build relationships with, and then slowly start reaching out to them. These are your long-term relationships. These are going to last you 5, 10, 20 years. And so there's no rush to get them in place. Some tips on how you can actually get involved with them is on bullet number 4, follow them and engage on LinkedIn. And so an example is I put content out on a regular basis. I just put out content yesterday related to the Army. And so the people who engaged my post on LinkedIn are people who were, well, some are my friends, fans, right? And then most others that want to do business with the Army. And in this particular case, it was the Army Contracting Command, Aberdeen Proving Ground. And so when you go in there, you can begin to find people. It's a great way to find people and begin to engage with them. If they comment on my stuff or if they're writing their own stuff, it's a great way to begin to build that long-term relationship. One of my favorite things to do as I'm building a relationship with anybody is just ask, how can I help? I have a 2-part thing. One is a small ask of them. Hey, can I get a copy of strategic document? Where can I find this information? Do you know who does this thing? Something really easy for them to do where they feel like they've done me a favor and I want to do them a favor. It really is about building a relationship is about giving and taking. And so don't always just give, right? I've run into people who feel like they always have to prove that they can give. It's like, no, sometimes it's taking. That's fine. And so have an ask that you're going to get, but also have a give, something you can share with them. Ping them every 2 to 4 weeks. Like I said, you want to make sure, and this is tips for getting started, as you're moving forward, until you get that regular meeting scheduled, you want to be on their radar. And at some point, that strategic relationship, again, the measurement to me is that you've got a regular scheduled meeting every 2 weeks. That's a strategic relationship. If it's a federal agency person, it might be a little longer, like let's say a month. But anything more than a month is too long. That's not a strategic relationship. It still could be a good relationship, but a strategic relationship is one that says, yeah, follow back up in 2 to 4 weeks. I have all sorts of people like that in the federal government employees who are totally cool with me calling them every 2 weeks. I have people I've worked with in the past. They would just make a point of every morning for 15 minutes, just randomly call people. So rather than having a scheduled thing, they would call, not randomly, but strategically call these people every 2 weeks for 5 minutes. I'm just touching base, Sally, just seeing how things are going, anything we can help you on. Everybody's got a different approach, but you want to schedule a meeting every 2 to 4 weeks. Number 7, I want you to keep notes. This is kind of a key to delivering what you say you're going to do, right? Is keep notes about what you talked about. If you said you're going to do something, do it. But also, if they shared information, you want to understand that. I was talking with a CIO in one of the federal agencies, and he was saying that the thing that frustrates him the most is that when he shares information, people come back and ask him the exact same questions. He's like, I'm tired of answering the same questions all the time. And so just take a minute, if you're building a strategic relationship, to really write down, put in place some tools that allow you to take notes. So when you call that person again, you go, oh, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Number 8 is a great way to ask for something. This is how I try to build strategic relationships all the time in the federal market, is I reach out and I say, hey, can you give me a copy of a strategic document? Just today, I got a response back from a commander of a DoD command. In LinkedIn, I was just engaging with them on LinkedIn, and I asked specifically for that. Could I get a copy of the briefing that you just did, which is awesome. And so he sent it back. He got it to me. You'll see it in the next week or so where I share it out. But you can ask for those kind of things. It's important as you move forward. Number 9 is find these people everywhere else on the internet. If you're building a strategic relationship, you want to know what's important to them. It's no different than dating, right? If I'm dating somebody else, I want to know what's important to them. Nowadays, we kind of do a little stalking. We go, oh, you like to canoe and climb or something, right? It's not stalking. You're just trying to research a person, and it's no different than a relationship in the government or in the business world. You want to understand, what are they putting out? What documents have they shared? What's their company doing? So that when you come back, you say, hey, Tom, I saw that your company is doing this, and I noticed this thing over here that you might value. I just want to let you know about that. That's that giving thing. That's that strengthening or building the relationship. And then the last thing is, when you're picking relationships and you're trying to move forward and you're determining strategic relationships, don't let the relationships happen to you. Make them happen. And so I look at an org chart and I go, that is who I want to build a strategic relationship with. My chances for success is, let's say, 20 to 40%. But I've determined who I want, and I pick 10 or 20 people, and I'm looking for 4 or 5 that I can build long-term strategic relationships with. I want you to do that same thing. So just keep in mind, relationships, strategic relationships in the federal market, they'll lead to success. You want to have these relationships with somebody, some in the agencies, some in larges, and some in smalls. If you're just getting started, just start with small business relationships. And then the last one is start with just one. If you don't have any, and try to get a biweekly, every 2-week meeting with that person. It could be somebody from a small business, but on a regular clip. And again, we have training that goes much deeper into this. So do me a favor, if you're getting value from this training, become a sustaining member or just ping us and say thanks. We always appreciate that. But come back for tomorrow's training, because strategic relationships lead to slam dunk opportunities. And that's what we're talking about tomorrow. So remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.